What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk Radio with Woodley. Today, we have special guest Miles. He's bringing some awesome things to the table that I'm hoping to be able to give to all of you and to all of my clients. As you guys know, I'm in the personal training field. But yeah, I'm very excited for today's call. We don't get to do a video podcast very often. Got some new things coming out for Real Talk Radio with Woodley. And let's go ahead and dive on in. So, Miles, I would have done it for you, but I think it's better coming from the source. Why don't you tell us what brings you on the call today and what we're going to be talking about?
So my name is Miles Marinez. I have been roasting coffee for about 8 years now, and I'm the owner and founder of Ramble On Roasting. And me and Belton are about to start a little ambassador partnership here to get high quality coffee in the hands of some people that just deserve it.
Which I'm super pumped about because I'm picky about my coffee. I started drinking black coffee probably around like 2013. I used to hate it, as most people do at first. And it grew on me, man. So I've gotten to the point now where I know what kind of coffee I like. I know what brands I typically like. I know what roast I want. I like having no additives in it because I really want to taste the actual coffee. Super excited when we were given this opportunity to kind of collab and work together because I know how much time and effort you put into your brand and what you do. So that brings me to this question, man. Like, what gave you the name for the brand?
We're going to find out here together, but I've got a little tendency sometimes to just run my mouth, dude. And so rambling just feels natural. It feels right to be a part of the brand. But also, I'm a huge fan of the Grateful Dead. Big Deadhead. And one of their songs that I've always loved is named Ramble On Rose. And so Ramble On Rose, Ramble On Roasting, it just felt like a good expansion of two things that I'm really into. And here's some lore for you. This is actually the coffee that is going to you once we get off this. That's why the logo is a rose blooming out of a cup of coffee. It's because it's named after Ramble On Rose.
I had no idea that you did it for that reason. That's sick, man.
Yeah,
I was a little bit, I was a decent metalhead. I don't know if you consider, I mean, I do, but I got into some weird stuff like Cannibal Corpse, Bring Me the Horizon. Yeah.
I know who you've done.
So I went all in, and then I tapered back into like Avenged Sevenfold, a little lighter, but to be fair, this was Avenged Sevenfold on Holy Confessions days, not before they got more into like, I don't know what they do these days. It's not the same though. So is Ramble your favorite song by them?
It's one of my favorite songs for sure. Yeah.
What about the album? You like the album itself?
The album that it's so, man, here's the thing with the Grateful Dead is you have to listen to the live recordings. Like there's too many of them available on Spotify and YouTube, and that's where the good stuff really is. So for anybody listening, Closing the Winterland, that's the album. Listen to Ramble On Rose on that album. It's a spectacular live edition. It's not too heavy on the metal side. Closing the Winterland. Yeah.
Well, if anyone's listening to this, we'll see. If Miles likes the way this goes enough, maybe we'll have a promo code dropped with this podcast that you guys can use to get the coffee and drink it while you listen to some good music. But Miles, I want to ask, man, like what other than the name, what really inspired you to take the leap on investing in your own small batch coffee? Because investing in your own business by itself is pretty scary for most people. So like what gave you that final push to really do it?
Man, this is the third business I've started now. And so I feel like I built up a little bit of confidence in fumbling and learning a couple other times. But where this really started was my first job out of college. So working at a hospital system in Connecticut. And I was pretty much a debt collector. Like I called patients that had outstanding balances. Dude, I was everybody's best friend.
Brass knuckles and stuff. Yeah.
Now, you don't want to meet Johnny in the car. And there was one patient that I was talking to. He owed a lot of money, and it was for complicated heart surgery. And you learn doing that the more complicated the surgery or the more severe the surgery and the larger amount, they usually have more creative names and choice words for you, which is fair. So I called him and I was like, all right, gonna get chewed out by somebody with a heart condition. Turned out to be the nicest guy ever. I was actually just on the phone with him yesterday too. This is back in 2018 though.
Okay.
I was talking to him, asking him about what he does for work because I just like to get to know people. And he told me I do something with coffee. That was like just enough for me to get on the hook, you know? So we're talking, I collected his payment, and my supervisor at the time comes walking down and she's like, "Oh, if you've already made your collection, you can't small talk the patients, Miles. It's time to move on." She was such a pleasant woman to be around. And so I'm hanging up with him. I was like, "But is it okay? Like, I'm just really enjoying this conversation. Is it okay if I reach out to you separately, just on a personal note?" "Absolutely." I go, "Okay, cool." So I call him and I go, "Hey, I wanted to know more about your coffee roasting business and everything inside of that. If that's okay, like, I just want to learn." He tells me his whole life story. He's an immigrant from Pakistan, came here in college, met the love of his life, patented technology together that a major company ended up buying off, and that set them straight for life. So he's like 24 when that happens.
Oh, wow.
So travels the world, comes back, has a kid, puts his son in college, and then they're just there. They've seen everything they've ever wanted to see. They've achieved everything they could hope to achieve, and it's like, wow, this happened way earlier than we thought it would. What do we do now? So they start traveling again, and what they noticed was everywhere they went, no matter the continent or first world, third world country, if you said to somebody, "Hey, do you want to get a cup of coffee or do you want to have some tea?" everywhere it meant the same thing. It meant, let's sit down and just talk to each other. Let's build some sort of bridge here. And so that sparked his curiosity. I'm giving you the long story. That sparked
No,
his
that's perfect.
curiosity.
I'm enjoying it.
That sparked his curiosity to then see where coffee is grown and how these farms operate. He's a really smart guy in engineering, worked with different, I'm losing the word, but geologies, different soil types,
Right.
and botany. There it is. And he goes to start touring farms and is appalled because he's like, these are just being run horribly. And as I'm talking to the employees, like, the employees don't really care because they're just being stomped on here by some major corporation that owns
Right.
the farm and is just like diminishing all their work. They're getting pennies on the pound for back-breaking labor. And then he figured out what to do with the rest of his time and money. So he started buying up coffee farms, and he started literally terraforming the land to structure how runoff water is coming off of the farms so that the communities around it could use it. He removed production quotas from the farms that were getting an authentic crop. Like, anybody who has grown anything, like, your crops are not going to be perfectly consistent year over year, and unless you're just pumping pesticides and chemicals into it. So he took that out of the equation, helped the community, started making sure they were actually being paid regardless of their production because there wasn't a production quota. And he's telling me all this over the phone, and I'm like, this is the coolest guy I've ever met. What the hell? Like, and so now he has this he has a very quaint home in Connecticut, and he just has massive amounts of coffee shipped to him that he distributes both green and roasted. And not really knowing where to go in the conversation after he tells me all of this, I was just like, that's so cool. Can you teach me? And he's like, I don't know what you want me to teach you, man. Like, I kind of told you my life
He's
story.
probably, like, kinda pumped though too, because I mean, it's like with anything else, like, I don't know, I think it's really neat. Like you said, it was that one conversation where he said, "Oh, I do things with coffee," and you're like, "Yep, that's it. That's all I need to hear. Let's talk after this is done." There's something to be said about when something just clicks like that,
Yeah.
right? So he might not have known what to teach you, but he's probably pumped all the same that, like, you're just taking as much of an interest as you were. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Keep jumping in, dude. He figured out what to teach me because he asked me, and I was like, I don't know. Like, how to be like you is what you could teach me. And he was like, how about this? I'll teach you how to roast coffee. And I go, okay, that's cool. I am not an immigrant from Pakistan that moved here from college, so I kind of already missed the boat on being you. So
Right.
talk to me like I'm a third grader. I don't know left from right. Like, I've got a pen and paper. I'm going to learn how to roast coffee. I lived in Connecticut at the time. And he goes, well, where do you live? Like, what town? I tell him, and he tells me the town he's in. And he goes, well, what is that, like 45 minutes away? I go, just about, yeah. And he goes, we could have as many of these conversations as you'd like, but if you want to just come to my house, I could just show you everything. And I go, okay, sure. And so that next weekend, I ended up sleeping in his basement and living with him and his wife, and it was a wonderful experience.
That's
Made me
awesome.
feel like a part of their family. He showed me he's like getting into beekeeping as his hobby at that time. He's just got a very productive mind, and he's
Yeah.
wicked intelligent. So everything he does is just to the T of quality. And he shows me green coffee. He starts telling me like the different work that he's doing at different farms. At that point in time, he was just
For the
wrapping up a
audience, sorry, for the audience, not for me, of course. Can you explain what green coffee is?
Yeah, I know you know. So green coffee, let's take a step back. So coffee is a
Okay.
plant. It's kind of like a bush, and it grows these cherry looking things, fruit.
Okay.
And if you take those cherries and you take the skin off, you're left with all this like the pulp, the fibery meat of the fruit, and you push that down, and you have these two tiny little green things. I wish I had them right here. We have these two tiny little green things that are sort of like the pit of that cherry, and that's
Okay.
two coffee beans. And then you take that, you put it through a whole like wash, ferment, dry process, and then you are left with this grassy looking little green Give me 1 second.
And while we're pausing here, I just want to throw out there while he grabs these beans for me to see. The reason why I think it's so interesting that like he got so quickly hooked on this entire coffee endeavor is because that's how it was for fitness with me. It was a few conversations, seeing what it did for myself, and then realizing, kind of like what you said, Miles, on that you're back. It's when he talks about like going anywhere, having a cup of coffee means the exact same thing. Cup of tea, whatever you want to call it, right? Like that environment that you create just with that simple question, it's a universal language, right? And that's what I see in fitness as well. And that's why like seeing you light up talking about it, I'm like, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
I know how that feels to dive into that. So anyways, back to the green coffee.
Yeah, I just picked some up to show you firsthand. So let me see if my camera.
I think it's clear enough.
Okay, so it's this tiny little guy, and I promise you, I've tried enough times to not try on camera right now. I'll send you some if you want to try. You're gonna break a tooth before you bite into this. It is so
Really?
dense, and if you do find a way to chop one up and try to chew it, which I've never done, it tastes horrible. Like it's unbelievable that this is something humans consume. But this is what I mean when I say green coffee. So
Okay.
green coffee is processed from the crop. Again,
Okay.
two of these exist together inside of that like cherry as the pit, and then once it's processed, you get green coffee, and then roasters like myself do that secondary processing of
Okay.
roasting, which leads it to the final product that we all know.
Well, now that everyone else knows what we're talking about, you were saying, so he was showing you green coffee.
He was showing
Can
me
we
green coffee,
there we
showing
go.
me the roasting process. We started roasting batches of coffee together. And I burnt that stuff to piss. Am I allowed to swear on here?
Absolutely.
Dude,
Feel
I
free to.
burned the shit out of it. Like it was so bad.
That's
And
awesome.
then I was like, so how do I keep doing this? Since it was like in this massive industrial machine that he had like just installed in his home with a vent broken off. And I was like, how do I do this if I'm not at your house? He was like, oh, well, you could do this in small batches in just like a stainless steel pan or a cast iron pan or pot on your stove at home. It's the same process. You just control the heat. It's similar to smoking meats in theory, where it's like
Okay.
you have item and you want to bring it to a desired temperature in a certain period of time in a controlled environment. Like in theory, very similar, right?
Yeah.
And so then he shows me that. I bought like 20 pounds of green coffee from him like before I left his house, and I just start roasting coffee at home. Every like ridiculous, dude. I keep buying more green coffee from him. It was a hobby.
So is he your source then?
He's one of them.
Okay. Okay. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Now, as I said at the beginning of the call, right? Like I'm pretty particular about my coffee. Super excited to get some from you. Typically I would normally wait to endorse something until I've personally tried it, and I'm still going to do that, just to be clear. But I know you're a man of integrity, and just in like the passion that you have in this alone, I'm very excited to try it. And honestly, like I said, share this with everyone that I train with the training company that I work with. But I do want to ask you, so like I kind of have a better idea idea of like what inspired you? Where do you source this coffee from? I know you have multiple sources, but for me, caffeine is something that I'm very particular about because of its effects on the body, because of what I do for work, right? I'm very big into nutrition, making sure that I am having whole ingredients as often as possible. I don't try to do a lot of refined food, refined carbs and things like that, or processed carbs, right? Processed food in general. So I want to ask, like, for you, when you started this and compared to where you are now, what's your target audience? Is it someone like me that's in the athletic world that races, or is it your average Joe, no pun intended, walking down the street looking for a cup of coffee?
You know, it's people like you, not because you do like high rocks races and things like that, but because you're a conscious consumer.
Okay.
Those are the people that I'm really trying to reach. Like the folks that give a damn about what they're buying, what they're putting in their body. And now what I've found over time is that a lot of those people are athletes or they're high performers in some way, shape, or form, because the conscious consumer typically cares about their body more and they care about their impact in the world more. That just tends to look like athletes. A lot of like financial professionals, financial advisors fall into this category too. And then selfishly, I love rock climbing, so I'm always trying to get this more in front of like the rock climbing community too.
That's planting a seed right there for the next Climbing Ugly skit that we have. So I want to ask, like, you have a lot of integrity in what you do, right? We talked about this a couple of times, and there's obviously a lot of value in what you do for you and the consumers that buy what you produce, right? What would you say is the most important value to you? Like, what separates you from everyone else?
I've got two things there. One is going back to the story I was telling earlier, is the effort of sourcing. I encourage anybody who's curious enough to like Google this, but coffee farmers are treated horribly. And coffee is the second most traded commodity on the planet right after crude oil. So think
Really?
about how much coffee needs to be produced in the world to satisfy that many people.
I did
And
not
so
know
a
that.
part of
That's insane.
yeah. And so much coffee is artificially produced. And when I say artificially produced, I mean it's grown in a region that maybe would not be conducive to coffee in a, sustainable way, but because of the chemical treatment that we put on it, it's able to produce as much coffee as we say it does. And so the effort that I put into sourcing coffee, one, I'm very lucky to have met my mentor in the coffee world. And I've found somebody else that has a very similar passion to him for impacting the community before it gets to you and me. But the reason sourcing is so important is not only because, well, again, we have a more authentic crop and a more true organic crop, but also think about the people that are farming this. And like they are
Yeah.
spending months and months for this bag of coffee to be able to end up on your doorstep. And the only way that we're able to keep that going in a humane way is by actually paying them, being a part of their
I agree.
community and helping them. So that's number one. I think community is everything inside of coffee. Like I said, that's what it means. And so we could do a lot for the community that gets us the coffee, but then also in having coffee, we could be more mindful,
Yeah.
instead of rolling through Dutch Bros or going through Dunkin' and popping through Starbucks, and I drink my sugar bomb in my car alone because that's my morning routine. Like you and Emiko, or you and your neighbor down the street that you always enjoy, like just have a cup of coffee together. You don't have to spend the day together. Talk for 15 minutes, talk for 30 minutes. But that's an interaction. That's not a transactional thing, but you get to bond with people
I think
over
in a
it.
way it is, right? There's value to be had in those small interactions. Like you gain some, hopefully, if you're around the right people, you gain something positive from those interactions. I think it's a bit of a transaction,
Yeah,
a bit of
that's
a
fair.
sale, a little bit.
I'm selling
But man,
vibes.
like you're talking my language because let me just take a step back. I wrote a couple notes down while you were talking because I didn't want to. I'm very ADHD. I didn't want to miss any of these points. But first thing was I want to touch base on was the fact that like fitness, like coffee, is a universal language. So I really appreciate that you saw that, jumped on the opportunity, and have become so passionate about this field. But two, having you talked about pesticides a couple times, right?
Yeah.
So just to relate this to a recent experience I had, we were recently in Portugal. We flew a little bit further southwest, I believe, to the island of Madeira. And they're very big on their wine, right? Like their wine there, like, you can only get it if you're on the island of Madeira, right? And kind of like what you were saying, they don't use any pesticides. They actually use certain plants as coverage
Yes.
for their wine crop to cover them, to protect them from the sun. There's certain plants that are closer to the ocean side where you can actually like you get more of a salty taste out of it, but you can tell like they're passionate, it's natural. And it's honestly just insane to me, especially in the fitness world that I'm in, to see some of the ingredients that we allow in our food. I mean, this is the positive and negative about living in a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a society. What kind of society are we in?
Like capitalist or
Yes, a
first world.
capitalistic like society.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We're all in a society, right? But living in like a capitalist world, I mean, society that we live in, it's insane the stuff that we allow people to put into their bodies for the sake of business. Now, I'm not a communist. I love America, right? I love my country, but from your perspective on health and what we put into our bodies and making sure that's clean, it's ethical, and making sure that people are getting quality products, I'm 100% behind that. And I love to see that. And the last thing, you talked about this mentor. What was his name again?
His name is Naren.
I just think it's good for everyone to like continually hear that, because it's important when you find these people in the world that are able to take on the role of being a leader, especially for other leaders,
Yes.
right? So like I have something very similar. I've mentioned a couple of times now on this podcast and on others, I'm in the fitness industry. On the side of my hat, you can see the logo, True Transformation, right? On the front, you can see go to the gym. If anyone's watching this, this is your sign. But I found my mentor a few years back, right, through one of my best friends. My mentor is Josiah Novak. So he's the CEO of the True Transformation. And like you, he realized there was a big disconnect in the fitness industry with community. It's actually one of the main things that really made me want to work alongside him and work with his company. I'm the head coach there at this point. Very blessed to be able to say that and do what I do every single day. But we have facilitated this community within our company to where I literally had clients today that were like, Belton, everything you guys have taught me has been phenomenal. I'm at the point where I can do this on my own. I just could not imagine leaving this community. He was like, today I could have a bad day and call someone else up that trains alongside me and they would be there for me. And I haven't met half these people in person, because we do in person and online. I love where your head's at with what you do. The heart that you put into it is, you would think it'd be more common to find these days, and it's not, right? We live in a world that's so electronically connected that like it's give it to me now. Everything's AI and everything's at your fingertips. So this batch of coffee that I'm getting, I want to ask, did you do this at your house?
Okay, so that's a fun topic. So there's something. This is my home office that I'm in, and right behind the camera is my home roast setup. I have a 2 kilo roaster there, and like a whole like vent system out a window
Okay.
that I have lived out of for way too long now. And the business, this is an awesome problem to have. The business has been growing to a point where that thing reasonably cannot sustain what we're doing anymore. So there
That's awesome.
is a group. It's called First Crack. It's kind of like a maker
Okay.
space. If you've ever seen one of those where you could just come in and use like power tools to do
Yeah.
woodwork
We
and
used to have a
whatnot.
hobby shop when I was a kid.
Yeah. So First Crack is the same exact thing, except it's for commercial coffee roasting equipment. And so that's
Okay.
awesome. So I go in there and I'm roasting about 15 to 20 kilos at a time there. And that's where
Not
your
drugs,
coffee
guys. We're
is.
still talking coffee.
We're still talking coffee, guys. Don't get it twisted.
You just gave me a throwback, man. It was actually, so Virginia Beach, where I grew up, we had the Oceana hobby shop. And that's where I used to go to change out all my own tires.
Okay.
I'm so glad I don't do it myself anymore. But the hobby shop, man, like, damn, that brought me back. That's one of my most fond memories I have with my dad, just like going in there and learn something new every single time. Now, to be fair, what's crazy is as long as you had a military ID, you could walk into this shop, pull your vehicle in, and then throw it on a car lift, even if you've never used a car lift before. Which hindsight, now as an adult looking back, I'm like, that's terrifying.
That's crazy.
Like there's
That's
16-year-olds like me pulling up with my 87 Volvo station wagon, just throwing shit on the lift, being like, all right, we're going to do this, and like, I'm walking under it. I got my friends with me. Like it could have been bad, but luckily it wasn't. So we got to do it, man. We got to nerd out a little bit on coffee,
yeah.
more specifically on caffeine, right? And why coffee sources and caffeine sources are so important. So before I ramble, I want to get your intake, man. I know you said you had a decent bit. What's your knowledge base on caffeine? And like, what's your opinion on how people should use it? How often should people be taking this in? How can they use it for like performance? And then I'll kind of just bounce off of you from there.
Yeah, you're gonna have way more than I do on this because this is more of your pocket than mine. But First and foremost, with caffeine, I think we need to recognize it for what it is, as a drug. Like, it is something that changes chemicals in your brain. And just like with any other substance, some people are allergic to Tylenol or different medications. Like, caffeine will impact everybody differently. And so there is some responsibility on users to understand how they experience caffeine. I know some
Right.
people that just immediately anxiety through the roof. I know some people that it like feels like it levels them out, and it's like, how the hell is that a thing?
The
What is that?
psychopaths of the world.
I love it. It feels good. But like in terms of usage, listen, guys, there's no reason for you to be taking like 200 to 300 milligrams of caffeine in a serving. There's just not a reason for it. You're like
I
quad
agree.
shot of espresso at Starbucks because you need to feel alive, brother. You need to drink water, and you need to drink, and you need to sleep better. You need to,
You gotta hydrate.
yeah, you should be eating other foods. Well, caffeine will dehydrate you too over
Yeah.
time as you drink it. So
I
there's a lot
oh,
inside it. Go ahead, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say I agree, man. Like I like that you phrase that like that. That no one should be taking 200 to 300 milligrams in a serving. And I'm pretty new to the podcasting game. I'm not sure if we're like how cool it is for me to say other brand names. If we need to edit that, we will. But like Bang energy drinks, 300 milligrams in one serving, and it's all processed BS. So and the reason I bring that up is because I work with a lot of individuals, and when they come into our program at True Transformation, they're taking pre-workout, they're using energy drinks, and they're slamming coffee for the first half, not just their morning, but the first half of their day. And what's crazy to me is like probably for the last since 2015, I've only ever used black coffee as my pre-workout, which is another reason why I'm so excited to get yours and try it out, because I'm one of those guys, like I get too much caffeine, I'm anxious,
Yeah.
or I get an arrhythmia,
See,
which
that's
is
the
even
other.
more scary.
Well,
But
and
what
in
were you
it,
going to say?
it could be used as a pre-workout pretty well. That's why it's in all of those pre-workouts already. Caffeine is a vasodilator, and I am about to. There's a chemist that's going to listen to this and hate me because I'm about to butcher this. But caffeine is a methylxanthine, I think, or methylxanthine. Like, that's the family of stimulant that it lives in, and
Okay.
other stimulants in that family are used medically in the hospital to treat COPD, to treat blood disorders, because it is a vasodilator. It helps blood move through the body more quickly. I think the other part of coffee that probably lines up for working out, you'll check me on this, but it just stops your ability to feel tired. It's an adenosine antagonist. So if you
Boom.
cannot
Perfect.
feel fatigue, then how can you experience fatigue? Your brain, like your body, your muscles will get tired, but your brain just doesn't have the ability to catch that.
That for someone that said that they didn't know much about this, you were so spot on. It's insane, right? So for those of you that this is like foreign language, right? Like if you're like me in Portugal and you're saying the entire sentence in English and at the end you're thanking them and you're saying obrigado and they're like, you dude, you just talked to me in English for 30 minutes. Shut up. What we're saying here is so when you first wake up, right? Like your brain produces the chemical cortisol, which is the main stress hormone in the body. Your body uses stress to wake itself up. A lot of people make the mistake of drinking caffeine right away, whether it's coffee, energy drink, whatever your I don't want to say poison the choice because it's not a poison. It can be beneficial, right? Whatever your medicine, we'll say, of choices, your stimulant of choices. But what happens is when cortisol is at its peak and adenosine, which is a compound in the brain, is at its lowest, you drink caffeine and you're not reaping all the benefits that you could from it. Because all caffeine is an adenosine, like you said. You say antagonist, or how'd you phrase that?
Yeah, an adenosine antagonist.
So exactly, right? So what caffeine essentially does is it replicates that chemical compound adenosine. So the longer that you're awake, your brain produces adenosine. Easiest way to explain this: adenosine sticks to the cells in the brain, slows them down, and signals to the body, I am getting tired. Caffeine replicates that chemical, and so the cells stick to the caffeine instead of the adenosine, and it does the reverse effect. It tricks your brain into thinking that you have more energy, which a lot of people don't get. You don't get energy from these things. You're just literally tricking your brain and nervous system into being like, oh, I just woke up again, right? Recent studies, and I would love for you to either push back on this or give your feedback on this. Recent studies will show that if you can wait 60 to 90 minutes upon waking up to have your first source of caffeine, you'll get more benefit from it. And now you may not like this, but I'm going to say it anyways. I also believe that using caffeine intermittently, meaning that you're not using it every single day, gives you, because it's a stimulant, so you can build a tolerance to it and then thus need more and more and more. So I've gotten into the habit of using it, kind of haphazardly. I don't drink any caffeine on the weekends. I do my best, unless I'm on vacation, right? But I do my best not to, for the reason of when the weekdays hit, I want it to do its job. And in doing so, I cut out energy drinks. I don't do pre-workout. A cup of coffee, I'm good throughout the day, and then I don't get that midday crash that I used to get. But what are your thoughts on that?
You said that's the part we're going to cut out, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Coffee every single day, 3 times a day, buy 6 bags at a time.
I'm messing around. No, that's just like, so cortisol is a hormone, right? If we
Correct.
are one fighting the body's natural rhythm of cortisol and like response to cortisol, I don't have the science to back up what I'm about to say, but I feel like you're creating a hormonal issue inside of yourself if you're abusing this thing. Too much of anything is a bad thing. Like I said, you don't need 2 to 300 milligrams of caffeine. You just don't.
Yeah.
I will say I am a true addict. Like, I start my day with a cup of coffee, like about an hour in every day. I'm not going to hide behind it. But I've heard there's really good things in caffeine cycling. I've been scared to try it. I should just dip my toe in the water and like cut it out on Sunday for the Lord or something.
Yeah. You got to have that one rest day. I mean, but it's not necessary either, right? Like, not everyone needs to. This is like when you watch fitness influencers on Instagram, their workout plan doesn't mean it's going to work for you just because they're jacked. You don't know what the rest of their lifestyle looks like. So for me to say that that works for me, keep in mind what I said. I get arrhythmias if I have too much caffeine. That started 2 summers ago, which is why I cut energy drinks out altogether. Because I used to be a cup of coffee in the morning. And then I built the habit when I was a project manager in construction of cup of coffee in the morning, sugar-free Red Bull on the way to the job site. And it was just like a natural thing. I was the guy getting in like 500 milligrams of caffeine in a day.
Well,
and then the
that's
arrhythmia started. And my doctor was like, dude, what are you doing?
Well,
What were
the
you
other
getting ready
thing
to say
about
though?
that too, man, is like, realistically, based on the breakdown that you just gave of adenosine in the brain and how caffeine responds to that, and the brain like uses adenosine throughout the day to tell you like, ooh, your rest time is coming up. The more you drink coffee throughout the day, the more you are just like kicking that can down the road, and eventually you're going to mess up a sleep cycle. So
Yeah.
there's got to be, you have to figure out for yourself where that cutoff time for drinking coffee is, where it doesn't interrupt your circadian rhythm. But then the other side, with the arrhythmia is one thing. There's something else you said with the energy drink. That's it. Coffee is acidic by nature. It's a very acidic beverage, and some people's stomach don't respond to that very well.
Right.
And so like this goes back into one of the first things I said on this topic is like, you need to figure out for yourself. And dark roast coffee has much less acid in it than a light roast coffee does. And so some people like light roast coffee because, oh, it doesn't give me the runs or it doesn't make me feel weird. You probably have a stomach that is more sensitive to acidic foods.
Right.
And like, there's nothing wrong or bad about that. But I just bring this up because I think people need to be mindful about their relationship with the things that they consume, especially if you're consuming it daily. Like, if you find out that you are somebody that has a stomach that's sensitive to acids, but you're drinking 5 cups of coffee a day, my brother in Christ, you are killing yourself.
Well, and I can tell you right now, like, and once again, feel free, anyone listening can fact check this, but from what I've seen in recent studies, and this is both through studies done through NASM, the National Institute of Health. I don't want to waste much time citing things, but generally it's not, everyone's different, but when it comes to like caffeine intake, you probably want to cut that off within a 5 to 6 hour window of when you plan on trying to go to sleep, because studies will show that it'll not only affect the quantity, but most definitely affect the quality of sleep that you're getting, which, like, as you just said, your circadian rhythm, right? So like, not everyone needs a full 9 hours of sleep to feel refreshed. Anyone that's getting 5 hours, 6 hours or less, really, I hate to break it to you, but you're wrong. It's not good for you. I don't care how you feel throughout the day. There is 0% of people in the world that can survive on that or that are healthy that way. Anyways, but 5 to 6 hour window, man. But Miles, I could definitely talk to you all day about this. I don't want to give everything away just yet to everyone. So last thing I want to just reiterate, I do plan on ambassadoring your coffee so long as you still allow it after me telling people to do it intermittently. But
It's dead.
what I plan on doing is dropping a promo code with this podcast. So if you're up for that, I'd love to be able to do that. and just ask you if you had any last minute thoughts you wanted to share before we jump about your coffee. Also, question along with those thoughts. The medium roast coffee that I just got, how much caffeine is in a serving of that? Do you know?
Oof. I have not lab tested this. I don't want to lie to you. I'm
Okay.
going to guess about 120. It's a medium roast that is on the lighter side. So I'm going to take a true shot in the dark here and say 120 milligrams per cup.
Okay.
But again,
120 to 130 is pretty normal.
that's gonna, dude, we're gonna nerd out really hard in this, man. So how you brew your coffee and how much coffee you are putting into a cup could be manipulated by you. Like you could brew a cup that is, I don't have a mug here. You could brew a mug of coffee with 15 grams of coffee. You could also brew that same mug with 20 grams of coffee. If you brew it with 20 grams of coffee, you will inherently have more caffeine in it. We're not going to go there right now.
It sounds
But
like I'm going to have to get you back on the podcast, brother.
dude, I've also tried out polyphasic sleep schedules. So if you want to talk about the damage that I inflicted on myself in that, I am happy to nerd out on that. I would love to come back here.
That'd be awesome. So what I think I'll do, man, is we'll get your coffee. We'll try it out. I'm very excited. I'll get this podcast up and then I will drop a poll for all of you that are listening to this currently. There will be a poll attached to this podcast. Let us know, one, if you want Miles back. He'll be back regardless. I don't care what anyone else says. It's my podcast. Two, we can nerd out about some sleep. And then I would love to dive a little bit more on the differences in roast, honestly,
Yeah.
because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about like the level of caffeine per the type of roast. But yeah, man. And also rock climbing. We got to get into rock climbing.
Yes.
I know
Let's
you're way light years ahead of me in that game, but as I get more and more into it, would love to pick your brain and just because that's where we can really get in the nitty gritty about just
yes.
functional strength and the importance of functional strength. But Miles, man, I just want to thank you again for your time on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here, Bellum. This has been a blast. I've enjoyed this. Thank you.
We got a good thing going. We're gonna have some more things coming out you guys' way. So with that said, for everyone that's listening to me and Miles, if you took the time to spend with us the last 45 minutes, truly appreciate it as always. This has been another episode of Real Talk Radio with Woodley, and we will catch you guys next time.